Well, for more on the ceasefire in Lebanon, I'm joined by Alon Pinkas. He's a former Israeli diplomat and joins us from Tel Aviv. Alon, it's good to see you again. Thank you for being with us. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says that this is an opportunity to forge a historic peace agreement with Lebanon. What does that look like?
He says a lot of things. I wouldn't take him at face value. He's saying this because he was coerced into this by President Trump. This is not a ceasefire that he wanted, and I'm not yet sure about the exact contours of the ceasefire. And I think one of your reporters correctly reported just a few moments ago that there is a Hezbollah kill zone in the south of Lebanon, and it's not at all clear that the ceasefire will include that area. And once a ceasefire becomes partial, it ceases to be a ceasefire. So I'm not sure about that. Now, as for his declaration of peace with Lebanon, look, we've been in this opera before. Back in the 80s, there was a peace agreement signed between Israel and Lebanon. And when Israel withdrew from South Lebanon in the year 2000, in May of 2000, there was again talk of a peace agreement, and again in 2006 after another round of war, and now we're doing this again. I think Mr. Netanyahu failed, and I'm not saying it's entirely his fault because I think it was unattainable to begin with. He failed in his stated objective of disarming Hezbollah and basically ridding Hezbollah as a military and political force. And I honestly cannot see any peace agreement being signed between Israel and Lebanon with Hezbollah still armed. And for that matter, I don't see anyone disarming Hezbollah. So I'm less optimistic than some of your other reporters were.
So, Alon, I guess that begs the question then, why agree to a ceasefire and what could conceivably come out of it then?
Well, he had no choice. And here's the paradox of all this, Riley. The Iranians, those that both Trump and Netanyahu claim that they have been obliterated and eviscerated and annihilated and decimated and have nothing, shut the Strait of Hormuz again, saying that a Lebanon ceasefire is part of their ceasefire deal with the U.S., right, which the U.S. agreed to, but then a day later reneged on the 9th of April. So now the Iranians are basically proving to Trump that if he wants to do business, and he does want to do business because he wants out of this debacle that he got himself into, if he wants to conclude a deal with Iran, Lebanon needs to be on the table. Until 2 or 3 days ago, Riley, I don't think anyone heard Mr. Trump even mention Lebanon. He couldn't care less about Lebanon. It's got nothing to do with his now with his war with Iran, according to him. Now, all of a sudden, he has an opportunity to pivot away from the failure of the war with Iran, and it was a failure in many respects, and claim that he's orchestrated another spectacular war-ending peace agreement. Once he made that decision to pivot, he made it, I assume, he made it unequivocally clear to Mr. Netanyahu that the ceasefire has to happen, and it has to happen in the next 48 hours.
So this is my question then, Alon, sorry if I can jump in on you, is how much then of this ceasefire depends on the fact that the U.S. president is trying to make a deal with Iran? Because at the beginning you said that you believe that Netanyahu was forced into this by the president. Yeah, so doesn't the president then have some weight to hold this ceasefire, to tell Israel that, like, at least this 10 days, there's a ceasefire here?
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely. That's what I meant. Per your question, how much of that has to do with the president trying to strike a deal with Iran? 99%. Would he force Israel to abide by the ceasefire? 100%. Will the ceasefire hold is a different matter. I don't know. Because of what I mentioned a moment earlier, based on what your reporter said a few moments ago, that if South Lebanon is off the table and is not under the jurisdiction, per se, of such a ceasefire, then the ceasefire will collapse pretty soon. By the way, the Lebanese would not agree to it.
Right.
And so the ceasefire has to be adhered to 100%. And I think you're right, Riley. Trump will make it abundantly clear to Netanyahu to abide by the ceasefire.
And so, Alon, because we know that Netanyahu has already said that leaving South Lebanon during this ceasefire is off the table, is there something political, whether it's normalizations with Lebanon, whether it's something else, is there like a political goal at the end of this that could outweigh the need for this military operation?
Conceivably, yes. If Israel withdraws from Lebanon, there's not going to be any peace deal. There's not going to be any normalization as long as Israel, according to the Lebanese, is occupying a portion of their country in South Lebanon between the Israeli border and the Litani River, which is just a few miles, but nonetheless, it's a buffer. And until and after Israel withdraws from there, there's not going to be any peace deal, let alone diplomatic relations and normalization. Is there a silver lining? Yes. If Hezbollah ceases to be a military force and goes back to being the way it started, a social and political movement, then Israel has no say on the matter. But, it's been 3 decades that people have been making that argument, and it hasn't happened until now.
Okay. Alon Pinkas, a former Israeli diplomat. We always appreciate your insight here on Al Jazeera. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you.